Welcome to a new segment we like to call Rank 'em, where our reporters take on the hottest takes in sports, fight over how to power rank them, and try to come to some kind of agreement. So this week we are focusing on college football, and who better to have on than USA Today Sports' very own college gurus, Paul Myerberg and Dan Wolken. So thank you guys so much for joining us.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, great to be here.
This first ranking is going to be for you, Dan. As we know, players come and go in college sports, but coaches can really define a program for a long time. So that being said, it's not always easy keeping the job. So give me your top 5 coaching candidates on the hot seat this year.
All right, I'll start with number 5, Justin Fuente at Virginia Tech. This is his 6th year. The fans have been on him. They've had some really bad losses, Old Dominion, Liberty. That really sticks in the craw of a lot of Virginia Tech fans. This is kind of put up or shut up time for Fuente at Virginia Tech, and he's definitely on the hot seat. Number 4, I got to go with Scott Frost at Nebraska. It's basically been a disaster, 12-20. I knew there was going to be a lot of rebuilding to do, but when you look at the speed with which he was able to get Central Florida on the right track, to now be in year 4 at Nebraska and to not really feel like they've made a ton of progress is a huge disappointment. I think there's a lot of pressure. They need to win, and they've got a very tough schedule. Number 3, Jim Harbaugh. Totally new look staff there in Michigan this year. Just a general feeling that the program had kind of been stuck in a malaise. They've not really recruited particularly well. They have not beaten Ohio State 0-6 against the Buckeyes. It's just ever since they got really close to making the playoff a few years back, it's been a backward slide. Number 2, Clay Helton, USC. You can pretty much put him on this list every single year. Just 18-13 the last 3 seasons. His contract was so massive that it really prevented USC from doing anything with him. But now you're getting to the point where it's more manageable for USC to make a change. They just have not played up to the USC standard. And if that continues, they are going to make a change after this season. And number 1, Ed Orgeron at LSU. Orgeron won a national title 2 years ago. How much goodwill does that buy you? Not a lot in this environment in college football, especially at a place like LSU. He has been on the Gene Chizik path, I would say, ever since winning that national championship. Last year was not good. If they continue to backslide and it looks like they're kind of getting stuck behind not just Alabama but A&M, if they fall behind Ole Miss, they're not going to wait too long at LSU to try to right that ship.
Yeah, it's a good list. I'm glad you included Orgeron, Dan. I wasn't sure if he was going to make the cut. I mean, there's also a lot of off-field stuff that he's dealing with. The Gene Chizik comparison, I'm not sure how apt it is because the bottom really dropped out for Chizik in his 2nd year after the national title. I don't know if LSU is going to go 3-9. But yeah, I don't know if Orgeron has carried like the goodwill that even Les Miles did also off of that 07 season and then going back in 11. So I think he's in trouble. So good list there, Dan.
All right, Paul, this next ranking is going to be for you. So it's time to pull out our calendars, circle some important dates. I want you to basically give me the top 5 games of the season that will basically determine the college football playoff.
Yeah, I got number 5 as Oregon at Ohio State. And it's a big game for the Buckeyes, obviously, because every team does not have a huge amount of wiggle room, especially when you play 9 conference games. But it's a huge game for the Pac-12. Number 4, Georgia and Clemson in Charlotte. The winner should be number 1. This is the week 1 game, just based off the fact that no one else will have had a win of that quality. A lot of runway left for both of those teams to get into the playoff with a loss, but still obviously a win there is a huge feather in the cap, and it does give you more wiggle room than any other team in the country. Number 3 is Ohio State and Penn State. Like Dan said, and I agreed, Penn State's going to bounce back. So that game is going to decide the East Division, decide which team plays for the Big Ten championship. When you get to that point, that's going to decide who reaches the playoff. Number 2 is Oklahoma and Iowa State. The odds are they're going to meet twice this year in the Big 12, and once in the regular season, once again to decide the conference championship. That happened last year. They split. I think we all agree Iowa State's good enough to win both of those games and kind of finish in the 3-4 range in the final playoff rankings. And lastly, it's Alabama versus any team you want to pick in the West, whether that's LSU, whether that's A&M, whether that's Auburn. Just basically pick team number 2, and that's the game of the year in the SEC. Obviously, we've seen for Alabama, you can lose the West and still get into the playoff. No other team has that goodwill or that wiggle room.
Well, the one thing I would dispute is this idea that the Georgia Clemson game is going to have an impact on who wins the national championship or even makes the playoff. I think regardless of what happens in that game, Clemson still is going to have to win the ACC and do it with a clean record. And I think for Georgia, look, if Georgia loses that game and bounces back and runs the table in the SEC East and goes to Atlanta, wins the SEC championship, they're going to be in the playoff regardless. It's a nice win to have for Georgia if they're able to get it, but in no way, shape, or form do I think that that's going to determine whether they make the playoff.
Hey, sports fans, if you want to watch more sports seriously, be sure to check out these clips right here. And make sure you're subscribed to the channel to see all the great content from us here at USA Today Sports.